Shining bright lotus.
So this is a Dharma talk called You Are What You Seek, or an introduction to when the Buddha needs therapy. So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. So for the full period practice this year, we're going to be studying Keith Martin Smith's book, When the Buddha Needs Therapy. And today, as a way of introduction, I'm going to be discussing chapter 2, which is called What is Spiritual Anyway? Which is a good question. What is spiritual? But before we open that can of worms and discuss what we mean by spiritual, let's define what we mean by consciousness. And again, that should be quite interesting too, because I'm pretty sure that some of the greatest minds on the planet have not really managed to do that yet. So consciousness includes our ego, of course, but it also includes much more, such as our unconscious conditioning and our unconscious drivers. It would include our beliefs, our motivators, our values, what's important to us, and our hot buttons or our Dharma gates. I think simply put, consciousness is that which is aware of things, including an awareness of the ego itself. So right now, as you're sitting there listening to me, you know you are self-aware. Right now, you know, or ideally you should know, that your childhood, your place of birth, your education or lack of education, your race, your gender, your intelligence, your wealth or lack of wealth, and many, many other things have helped shape you into who you are right now, good or bad. You probably also know that your consciousness is a changing, fluid thing. We often treat it as if it is concrete or absolute, but we can look back through our life and see how it has changed and just how fluid it is. One day, for example, we may wake up in a terrible mood, and everyone and everything makes us angry. The next day, you may wake up in a wonderful mood and react to exactly the same stimuli that annoyed you yesterday or previously, but today we respond with love and compassion. So, of course, in both scenarios, your consciousness hugely influenced how you experience reality. Nothing was objectively different. Reality was pretty much the same. I say pretty much the same. It was exactly the same. And yet our experience of reality was completely different on each of those 2 days. So simply put, our consciousness is the lens through which we will filter life, through which we will filter our experiences of life. So consciousness itself is, of course, fluid and changing. And of course, it's hugely influenced by our brain chemistry. It's influenced by our personal psychology. It's influenced by our culture, our physical surroundings. We often think of consciousness as something that is steady and stable, but of course, looking at the examples I've given, it clearly isn't. For example, our consciousness at the age of 2 is probably very, very different to our consciousness at the age of 18 or 30 or 50 or so on. But how can we think of this in a spiritual sense, or when we are practicing meditation, for example? Well, understand that consciousness is always in relation to something. It's never in isolation, even if it's only in relationship to itself. So this is defining, or rather a defining characteristic of consciousness, of ego, of self, which is relationship. You might be in relationship with God, however you perceive God to be, or whatever religious lens you're looking at it through. You might be in relationship with yourself, your memories, with nature, with the spiritual realm, however you perceive that to be, maybe with other humans. If you're on a walk, for example, and you're contemplating your life, your consciousness is relating to itself, as well as with its stories, its memories, its relationships, its desires, and many other things which will arise and ultimately fall away. Maybe distraction, maybe you're horny, satisfied, unsatisfied, curious, bored, afraid, impatient, whatever it may be. But it's always going to be in relationship to something. Things I often see on social media at the moment, or even in check-ins in Zen circles. I hate the guy in the White House. I love the guy in the White House. I'm sick of guys being in the White House. Whatever your stance may be, it's relationship with all. So consciousness has identities inside of it, such as when you choose to step into a teaching role, when you choose to step into a therapeutic role, maybe when you choose to step into a leadership role, or maybe a follower role. And of course, consciousness can drop into these identities when needed. Egoic consciousness can also be an identity, or at least worn as one. Like when a person is fundamental or fundamentalist about anything, politics, religion, to name but two. So if you're more aware or more self-aware, you'll realize that all identities are constructed. Even if we act as if they are or even if we act as if this temporary identity is real, permanent or solid, if we scratch away at the surface, we can see that it is self-constructed. If you're less aware, maybe you won't realize this, and you start to wear identities, or rather you start to wear these identities or behaviors as something which is more concrete. And of course, at a higher level itself, consciousness itself will become self-aware. It will become fully self-aware. And this means that it knows it has an ego. It knows that it's part of a whole. So consciousness knows that it has a persona, and that these personas will rise and they will fall away. It knows it has psychological shadows or places that it can't actually see, but that these places can actually influence their thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors. At these higher levels, consciousness knows it changes. It knows that it's self-aware. It knows that it can be an unreliable recorder of history, or subject to letting emotions push it to incomplete conclusions. It knows that it only knows what it knows and nothing else, and that it's not very much what it actually does know. So that's consciousness. What is awareness, and how are they different? Well, in Zen, we teach that there are three poisons of the mind, or three ways that we can perpetuate suffering and prevent us from being able to see our true nature, or our true being. And of course, we're probably all familiar with the three poisons that are attachment, ignorance, and aversion. So here I'd like to talk a little bit about ignorance, which of course in a Zen sense means being ignorant of our true nature. Now, many people are not actually aware of their awareness, as strange as that may sound. they've never really experienced awareness, or the awareness that underlies consciousness, or what we often call awakened mind. Awareness is something other than consciousness, and something that does not change. So our consciousness can get very expansive or very contracted. Awareness is just aware. It doesn't get big, it doesn't get small, it doesn't change in relation to our thoughts. It isn't impacted when we first contact it, and it hasn't evolved and it hasn't changed. It exists entirely outside of time, yet fully within it. So when we notice that we have an ego, when we notice that our egos have parts and conditioned behaviors, we become more self-aware. This is our consciousness noticing a part of itself. When we allow an awareness deeper than our consciousness, something that can see the whole of us and all that we can see, then we begin to get in touch with something much, much deeper, something we may call being awake, or sometimes in Zen circles we refer to it as aware of being aware. In Zen we may call this awakened mind. So over the full practice, we are going to be investigating this further and deeper as we have different priests and roshis leading us through Keith Martin Smith's book. But what can we do in the meantime? As all the others are up in South Dakota, what can we do? Anybody who knows me well will probably have a pretty good idea of the next words coming out my mouth. Just sit, return to your cushion again and again. Zazen. Practice the first 10 ego deconstruction koans of Mondo Zen. Work on your emotional koan. Practice the 5 training mirrors and apply those to your life on a daily basis, ideally. Live the precepts. That will probably be quite a good start. So, thank you.
Shining bright lotus.